So just again to reiterate Laura's welcome and to talk a little bit about landscape architecture. As she said, I'm the head of subject and I'm joined today by Teodora and Camilla that will talk respectively about the graduate experience and the student experience. What I'm going to do first of all is introduce the topic of landscape architecture, because unlike maybe some of our colleagues, engineers, architects, it's not a profession that is as readily well known. So first of all, where are we located? We're located in the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. Here we are on Induction Day 2019. All the first year students of architecture and landscape architecture and planning meeting for the first talk. And I just show this slide to say that we're within this school. We share one or two modules. We have our own studio space, but there are shared spaces as well. So we're very aware of what's going on in the different disciplines. We see their exhibitions and so on. So in the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. And this is here we are on the Richview campus. Some of you may be asking, maybe why should I consider landscape architecture? It is a profession that is so well suited for people that care about the environment, are interested in design, but also care about people and society. So like architecture, like planning, landscape architecture is an activity, and it specifically is involved in shaping and managing the land. And it really is involved with the everyday, everywhere and anywhere outdoors. And it also is a profession. It has got regulations and there are policies at both national, international and European level. And we use this diagram on the left quite a bit when we're explaining to people what landscape is and what is involved when you go to study the discipline of landscape architecture. And really what this circle is saying, it's got landscape at the heart, but at the outer edges, it talks about both people and place. So we are concerned about people and place. We want to make good places for people. And around the periphery, which you may or not be able to see, but there are topics like geology and soils and land use and settlement. And these are many of the subjects, the output of which we embrace in landscape architecture. So we take the findings of the geologists or the soil sciences and we apply those. So we're very much an applied profession where we take the knowledge of others and apply it. Now, where is landscape architecture? Or why might you think it's relevant today? Why would you consider landscape architecture? I think it's really relevant for those of us who want to make a change, because society today is facing so many grand challenges of shortages of resources. The population's increasing. We've got one finite planet to live on. We've got these things to think about: food, to think about clean air, clean water, and landscape architecture as a profession is involved in all of those. And I suppose what has driven the profession really is the growth of cities. So 2007, which may be the year around the time that many of you might have been born, that was the tipping point for the planet, because that was the first date that more than half of the world's population were living in cities rather than what we might call the countryside. And by 2025, which is the year that our current first years will be graduating, or they'll be out a year at that stage, we will have rapidly got to a situation where 2/3 of the world's population will be living in towns and cities. And there are both advantages and disadvantages of the two issues of urbanization and urban sprawl, and landscape architects work in that arena where we and our decisions that we make look at influence things like flooding. They influence things like how can we reduce that, how can we improve what we call the urban heat island, the quality of air in cities. These are all really, really relevant issues. And this next slide, taken in Shanghai, really tries to embrace the remit of landscape architecture. So here we are in a city, here we are working alongside our colleagues, the engineers that have designed the infrastructure, the architects that have designed the buildings, the planners that have made the decisions. But the landscape architect's work is the green living component, the open space in cities, and how important that is for the communities that live there in terms of their physical health. Is the air clean? Is the air cool? Is there places that they can actually go and exercise? You know, obesity is such an issue, but also just being able to exercise in cities, but also mental well-being. There's a lot of research saying, and we know this at the moment in the pandemic, that access to green open space has been hugely important to us. So it's the green aspect of the city. Here we have a slide from OVARP, which is a multidisciplinary engineering design team. And the green in this picture is the remit where landscape architects work alongside the built, or what you might call the grey infrastructure. It's the green living fabric of the city that is so relevant and is the workplace of landscape architects. So it's green walls, it's green roofs, it's the sustainable drainage within the cities for both humans and also for what we might call biodiversity, the insects, the animals, and everything else that is there. And really, it's the role of this green infrastructure in addressing the challenges of our cities is sort of the future area. And you can see even in this slide, we're looking at food growing on the roof. We're looking at whole integrated city areas. So that is, I suppose, in many ways, the future area of work for landscape architects. And I have emphasized cities quite a bit, but just to recall that the word landscape covers natural and rural areas as well. So there's a picture here of sort of rural Ireland, and the rural hinterland, the context in which our cities are located, are incredibly important as well. They're the source of our food, a source of a lot of our energy, and landscape architects work in those areas as well, very often doing what's called landscape character plans or landscape character assessments of those areas to help the decision making in the process. For example, where should we be locating wind farms, where should we be locating areas like that. And then the bottom two pictures just make the point that landscape architects, we deal in areas that may be considered outstanding, such as the bottom slide on the left, which is Killarney National Park, these areas that we want to protect for the enjoyment of everybody, but also what we might call the sort of periphery of the cities, or perhaps what might be considered degraded landscapes. Here we are on the outskirts of Barcelona, but these areas are incredibly important to local communities there as well, as a place for recreation, for food growing, and for meeting. So that is a little snapshot of what landscape architecture is all about. And now just to go on to talk about how it's taught at UCD. I'm giving you the more formal aspect of that, and my colleagues will talk more about what it's like to actually be a student at the moment. What this slide is showing you is that design studio is absolutely at the core of what we do. This is the sort of crucible. This is where the sort of the engine of the education really is, and all our other modules that make up our curriculum feed into that. So the applied sciences that I talked about before, geology or soil science, they feed in there. History and theory, it might be history of landscape evolution, that feeds in there as well, and then some of the technology. So all these other subjects feed in to the design studio, and things are tried and tested there. So on the left hand side you get two pictures of students working in our design studio. On the right hand side there's some of the technologies, horticulture there at the top, and at the bottom you see students going out and looking at construction details. So I suppose compared to what is particularly unique, I suppose, about really all the subjects in the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy is the importance of the design studio. It's at the core of our education, and it's, I suppose, a very particular type of learning experience that may be a little different to what you experience at second level. It's very much an engaged process. It's not passive. As you see at the bottom, one of the students is presenting his work to his classmates. He's getting feedback from them. You present it also to staff and to other colleagues. So it's really problem solving, it's finding creative solutions to issues and debating them with others. So what this studio is, and students will be spending a lot of time in there, and I'm sure my colleagues will talk about that, but it's an environment where we try to create an atmosphere where students feel comfortable to work, to reflect, and to present their work. So there's a lot of exchange goes on in the studio, either peer-to-peer among students or peer to critics and staff that come in. So it's a place for discussion, for interaction, and it's a very quite an informal contact point between staff and students, but very much, as we say, a collaborative workspace for the development of design ideas. And then we also have the campus, and the UCD campus is an excellent place to learn landscape architecture. Firstly, we are set in this great green campus that has got different types of landscapes there. Here you can see some of our biodiversity areas there, which have been planted up for bees and for wildlife. But we've also got the bones of an old 17th, 18th century landscape there. And then there's been new waves of design on top of that. So there's a lot to see on the UCD campus, but we also have very good facilities. The picture in the top shows you our environmental lab, which we teach horticulture there to our students. So they're looking at different growing media for growing plants. And on the bottom, you can see part of our construction lab where students get hands-on experience in constructing some of the devices that landscape architects work with. We also take students out into the landscape. Here's my colleague Michael Hoyrick with a group of students taking them to Lochborough Park in the centre of Ireland, where we're looking at cutaway peat bog, we're looking at forestry, and we're also looking at art in the landscape. And it's a large area, so we use bicycles to get around that. So we have a field trip around Ireland for our first years, and then in subsequent years we go to other usually European cities to look at landscapes there. So because it is a landscape, because it's the outdoors, because we are training our students to work in an international arena, it's important that we go abroad to look what's happening there. We also have very good international contacts and cooperation. We are part of the Erasmus program, so we've got links with a range of different schools. This is the student mobility program that I'm sure you'll hear about in other presentations from UCD. We've got quite a few partner universities where in a normal non-pandemic situation we would have students joining us in our studios and in our classes, and our own students would go out, and typically this happens in third year, and I know Camilla and Teodora may be talking about that. And we also have cross-border cooperation with a range of different projects there listed there at the bottom. I think one of my colleagues may be joining us and available for Q&A later on. It's also important to note we've got good links with the professions. We have a core of academic staff. They're full-time staff that work at UCD, but we also have part-time staff that are principals of design practices in Dublin, and they spend about a third of their time teaching at UCD and leading some of our studios. And then we also have a bigger panel of what we call design fellows, and these are practicing landscape architects that come in to help in studio as well. And we also have an internship, and this is in year 3 of the 4-year program. Our students go out and or can go out and use part of that third year to work in the profession. So here are 2 posters that some of last year's students have just presented to us, where one student worked in ACOM, which is a very large multidisciplinary practice with offices all over the world, and he records his experience there. And we've got another student who worked in a smaller practice where the work was maybe more domestic and residential, and looking at some of the design work he actually undertook there. So a range of different experiences take place in third year. And also there's a chance to go abroad. So here we have a work from a student who went to work in a Belgian firm of landscape architects, and another student who spent some of his time in third year going to Virginia Tech and actually studying there. So in third years, there's a chance to either go to another university or else to work in practice, or to do a combination of both those two. So really, to conclude what I have to say, the entry requirements for landscape architecture last year, you can see the point range there. It was from 470 to 490 points. It's a 4-year degree that we have that gives you a bachelor, a BSc in landscape architecture. The matriculation is listed there. And really my final point before we move on to the next speaker is really to say, why would you or could you consider landscape architecture? And really just to say, I mean, if you're passionate about design, about people, and about the environment, and if you want to change, you should think about landscape architecture. This is September 2019, where the students are about to take part in the Climate Action March. So if that sort of ticks any boxes with you, maybe think about landscape architecture.
Okay, so as I said, first of all, I'm a third-year student, and I'm also an international student, which means I moved all the way from Italy just to study landscape architecture here. So that tells you the determination that I had for this course. And in terms of the academic environment, I think UCD has a really, really nice approach and method. We're all divided in small classes for this course. And I think it's really nice, especially for studio, because we can develop like really nice relationship with our tutors. And they, at the end, they all get to know you by your name. And I think it's important because when you have a problem, you know where to go. And when you receive tutorials, it's good for you. They make you grow, and you really don't feel like you're in a space where you don't know where you are. But I think it's just really, really nice to be in the studio and have that kind of relationship with them. As I said, like we have really small class, so you also develop like really nice friendships that might last for life. So, for example, this is one of the first picture we ever took with my class, and I think we didn't even really like know each other well at the time, but we just took a picture. So for the learning methods, we have our core modules, as Karen was talking about. One of the main one is studio, and then we develop other modules like ecology or land use and environment. We get to know plants and landscape, and it's really nice to learn. But also we have a lot of labs and tutorials. So we move from like the practice kind of skills, and we develop practice skills. And we also have electives, so we can pick our own elective once a semester. So I think that's also really nice because you can do more modules that are related to your course, or you can like space a little bit into the architecture one, or you can do like, I know a lot of people did like psychology, for example. I did languages, so once I learned French and I'm doing Arabic. So I think you can just like play with your modules a little bit, and that feels like good if you want to move a little bit from landscape architecture, or if you have like even another option with landscape architecture. And then we also have fields and study trips. Karen showed us a few pictures, but yeah, this is when we went to Connemara National Park in 2018, and it was our first trip together, and we learned like good things, and we spent like 3 days, and I think that trip changed us because it changed the perspective we used to see like the land, and it changed our mind to the course. And then we have drawing and making, for example. And I know someone maybe asked in the question if we need a portfolio. We don't. So we literally start from scratch in first year. So don't worry, like we started from like drawing a line, which might seem silly, but it actually like that was the first thing they taught us, and it's still important today when we do our projects. And we also do this both in studio and both we do exercises outside. Then, as I said, we have a lot of facilities, and we can use like both computer skills. So we have computer labs accessible to us, but we also do practical things. So we have a lab, and we do like model making, we do land art, we study plants and landscape. So I think this really changed your perspective for the course. It's not just theoretical. And what I was gonna say, it's like sometimes for studio you do projects and presentation. As I said, you develop a lot of skills, and you ended up being able to build up your own portfolio. So each semester you do your portfolio, and with that you can do not only you can apply for internship, but you can also join a lot of competitions. So we had the opportunity to join competitions, and I think that was a really, really nice thing to do because it really showed us what was the world outside college. So what was the real world working. And I think we got like nice achievements, like for a competition, for example, in Swinford, or even the sanctuary in Dublin near Smithfield Square. We arrived fourth with our design, but it wasn't like first year, and a guy in fourth year won. So like it was a really, really nice thing to do, and it counts a lot for your portfolio. Like if you go to a firm and you say that you worked in a competition, and even if you didn't write first, but you tried and you took part of it and you were considered, like they will like straightly take you, or if they interview you, that's the thing they're going to ask you about. And in terms of workload, even for the other option, I got a lot of question about this. And yes, the workload sometimes can get intense. Like you might want to have like a lot of, like you have a lot of projects to work on together. But I think it's all part of the process, and like we have a lot of the facilities available, so you can stay in the computer room, you can stay in studio, maybe not now due to COVID restrictions, but usually we're all in the studio. And like always remember that you're all on the same boat, and we have like a really, really great student support. For example, we have the student advisors, we have the peer mentors, you can rely on tutors, there are help centers, so even if you have like problems with your essays, you can go there. And then even if like on an economic point of view, you have funds and grants. And what I was saying about the opportunities earlier, and Karen talked about this as well, is not only, yeah, you build your civic skills, but you can get, as part of your third year, you can both study abroad and do the Erasmus or get an internship. So for my experience, like I received an opportunity to go to Virginia Tech for the full year, and that stopped due to COVID. So I'm going next semester, so from January until May. And at the same time, I got like interview to work for Dublin City Council and TTT in Marion Square. So that's a process that's still going on. So I have to do a few interviews. But as I was saying, for the opportunities that you have out there, it's really great because they literally show you what's outside college. So they put you into real world. And for what I know, most of the times, the people that did their internship for like 6 months, they get to stay then after for like another 4 months. They just work there, and most likely they're gonna call you back, or if you apply later and you did a good job doing your internship there, they're gonna call you back. In terms of the social environment, as I said, it's we have small classes, so, and we're all in the studio together, like not now with COVID, but we're all like from first till fourth year, we have a studio which is divided in like 4 sections for the years, but you always see someone from the other years or some other tutors around. So like one thing is like, don't be afraid to go to other students, they might help you. Like I got a lot of help from students in fourth year, especially now for all the internship and thing. And especially in first year, it was really, really hard to understand what we needed to do. So we just like asked second year, and they like really, really help you. So like that's not a problem at all. So that's, you, as you can see, that's a few pictures of us going out all together. And as I said, we have a lot of facilities that includes the library, the labs, the workshop, the computer rooms. And if you want to space off, you go to the gym, pool, cinema, more. And we also have like a lot of societies. You can like choose the one that you want. For example, we also have the LARC societies, and we organize like events for Christmas, for ends of presentation. So I think it's really, really nice. And most of the time, tutors join us, and all the years are together. And it's really, really nice time to spend all together, especially like after COVID, probably we'll be able to do it back again. So yeah, if you have any question, like don't be afraid to ask me. Thank you.
Nice to see so many of you have joined the call this morning. My name is Teodora Karneva. I'm a graduate of the Landscape Architecture School in UCD. I'll talk to you a bit about my perspective as a former student, and then I'll go on to the graduate perspective as well. Let me just share my screen. Am I just, yeah. The program, as Karen and Gabriella mentioned, is designed, or sorry, Camilla, is designed to prepare its graduates to deal with the current challenges of the profession. Architecture is about finding the perfect balance between social sciences, natural sciences, and design. Although we normally put emphasis on the finished product, the design process is the driving force behind our profession. Studio is where most of that happens. It is really a collaborative environment where you discover, evaluate, test out ideas, and push your limits in creating more inspiring outcomes. You will learn to sketch, make models, figure out particular challenges of the project, carry out site visits to analyze existing conditions, and compile your work and findings in a presentation format, and have formal crits where your peers and tutors will be able to discuss your ideas with you and give you further inspiration. You'll also have some lectures on the main campus, which will provide you with the knowledge of the social and natural sciences that you can then bring into your design work. You really do learn by doing. There's a lot of exciting aspects about the course, which I'll talk to you in the next few slides. The first year trip is really important to get you going in the course. It will help you meet all of your classmates and at the same time immerse yourself in the traditional landscapes of Ireland. Is a really good starting point for the course. Once you go into second year, you will go on a trip abroad. When I was in second year, we visited Hamburg. It was really an amazing experience because it was a trip which was organized in collaboration with another partner university. So we got to meet our colleagues from abroad, and we each had to prepare a presentation on an iconic landscape in Hamburg and learn about it. The image below shows Energy Hill, which was once a landfill site. It was converted into a park with a sustainable source of energy. The other picture is of Park Fiction in the St. Pauli district. It's a communal community garden. In third year, you'll have, as the other speakers mentioned, an opportunity to go on an Erasmus exchange program or an internship. I went on an Erasmus to the University of Weinstefan, close to Munich. I picked up modules in town planning and urban design, which really helped me broaden my understanding of the profession and get kind of a wider overview of what really is involved in landscape architecture. I also took part in a 2-year watercolor sketching course in Italy, where we went to amazing sites, UNESCO protected sites as well, and we just basically sketched all day and learned to create beautiful hand sketch compositions. I cannot recommend the semester abroad enough. I made so many friends as well, and I actually still keep in touch with them. Another unique aspect is the Landscape Architecture Society. We have our own society on campus. Students from 1st to 4th year all meet together. We organize events throughout the year. We do a couple of quiz nights. We organize guest speakers as well. We have the Halloween party, Christmas jumper party, and the landscape ball, which is lots of fun. By the time you get to 4th year, you will have all the skills required and the experience to be able to go out into the real world. Besides drawing, sketching and model making, you would have become really confident in visual and verbal communication as well. You will be able to take a project from concept through to construction and be able to communicate your ideas clearly to your peers and to tutors as well, and really be able to kind of defend your ideas because you would have gone through all that, all the design process. When it comes to life after college, I really think that it has been just as exciting for me as college has been. I've had the opportunity to work for 2 practices since graduation. One was in Australia for a multidisciplinary studio. It's called Aspect Studios. They have offices all over Australia and in China as well. It was really interesting because it was a big studio where I worked with urban planners, architects, landscape architects, architects and interior designers. And as you can see from the picture above, the office doesn't look too different to the studio in college. I worked on really amazing projects. Again, the skills that you've learned in college really do come to be used in practice. Here you can see we were making a kind of rough and ready model for a site in Saudi Arabia where we were trying to figure out the general topography of the site and its drainage. On the bottom, this is a visualization that we created for a really big playground in the city centre of Sydney, and it was for the local authority. It was the city of Sydney that we were doing this for. In practice in Ireland, I've been part of the design team for the improvements of the Cliffs of Moher visitor experience, which is a really, really big and exciting project. I've also worked on projects all over Dublin and Ireland. This is an image of Clondalk and Round Tower, which was completed a couple of years ago. Our practice has worked on St. Audens, Wolftown Square in town, and other kind of public open spaces in Dublin. I've also just started as a design fellow in UCD as well, and I'm helping out tutoring in first year with Michael, who is on the call and who's going to be helping answer questions after this. And that's it from me. Thank you.
So thank you to all our speakers that joined us for this morning's landscape architecture talk. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A session now. We've got about 15 minutes, I think, to field your questions. So as Theodora says, we have another academic on the call with us today. So I'm just going to add him on as well. You just bear with me. So I'm just going to put him to panelist. And then as he's joining us, I'm just going to have a look at the questions that have kind of come into us. And don't be afraid if anyone missed the start. We are taking Q&As. Just type your questions in at the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, just in that control panel there, and we'll get through as many of them as we can in the time that we have. So
Laura, I've been answering one or two of them online, and I've got one question here I haven't got the answer to, and I'm going to field it to you.
Okay.
We have the requirement of a science, and one person has asked, is geography a science? I don't think it is.
So there's actually not a requirement for a science subject for landscape architecture. It's just English, Irish, maths, and then 3 other recognised subjects. So you don't actually need to have a science. But there's the question answered. I knew waiting to go back to you is important. Yeah, if people are presenting with a science, I mean, they can do it from any of the sciences that are available on the Leave Cert curriculum, as far as biology, chemistry, physics, agricultural science, but it's actually not a requirement for the landscape architecture course. So for students who are worried about that, they don't need to worry. I wonder if my slide was incorrect then, because it might have said lab science on it. So Michael, well, I'll hand over to you, as Michael is the director of the program. So
good morning, everybody. It used to be on our list as one science subject, but we took it out a few years ago. I think 2 years ago, we decided not to go for the science route for applicants. So it's not a requirement. So that slide, we might need to amend this slide, Karen.
Yeah. And just on the requirements, I know, Karen, you answered it already, but for everyone else maybe is wondering, do you need a portfolio for entry into this particular course?
No, we don't. The UCD has no portfolio requirement for either architecture or landscape architecture. For those that are entering through the main CAO, it is just the CAO process. We do have a mature student entry, but that's not really relevant for this audience, I think.
Our ambition is actually that we bring every student up to a certain standard in terms of drawing, laying out their sheets and their presentations, and design skills, obviously, as well.
Yeah, and just in relation to that as well, so we don't require a portfolio, but do you think students should maybe be doing the likes of art for the Leaving Cert, or do you find that students should be good at art before they come into the course, or they should qualify themselves as kind of more of a creative person?
No, we have all sorts of students joining our course. Some did art, and of course they have some sort of advantage in terms of the first drawing lessons, but everybody else will catch up very quickly. And it's not so much about artistic drawing, it's more about professional drawing. And we learned that from day one on, as Camilla pointed out, we start with lines and then from there on we move on. So everybody can obviously will learn all the skills that are necessary to then progress into the profession.
Great, and then just someone's asking about how many places are there available in the course. So I know, Michael, you can probably answer that, but just to say that the places are small, but that's a good thing. So maybe you want to expand on why small class sizes are a good thing.
Yeah, we're taking on 25 students, typically 25 plus. So this year we took on 29 students. We have a certain capacity in terms of studio space and tutors, obviously, so that limits our capacity. But small group teaching is a big advantage, obviously. You get to know your classmates very quickly. The tutors will get to know you by your name in just a week. And the collaborative aspect of our course is hence really strong, I suppose, through those small class teaching.
It's wonderful getting all the questions, because when we do this live face-to-face in the big auditoriums at UCD, there's usually very, very few questions from the floor. One or two people might come down. There's a few interesting questions coming in about job prospects and whether you're restricted to Ireland. At the moment, I think all of last year's class, which was quite a big class, it was 20-something, as far as I know, most of them are all working. We are linked very much to what's happening in the world of development and the things, even, you know, despite COVID, there's lots of building going and lots of new schemes going on. So, and every practice I talk to, they say they're all very, very busy. And the answer absolutely is no. I mentioned at the beginning, we're a profession. We have international recognition for this degree, which means you can take it and work elsewhere with it. And in the past, our students have gone very far and very wide. I had a funny incident a few weeks ago. I was checking up on something and I knew somebody was working in an office in London. I said, I'm just going to lift the phone to this office and see. I needed some advice about working in the UK for somebody else. And I got through to the individual who'd graduated 3 years before. And he told me, sitting around the table in the same office, there were 3 other students, graduates from our course, that I didn't even know were working in London. And they were all working for one of the really big practices there. But we've had students working in China in the past, and Michael, you might know better, but literally
Canada, in Australia, and
yeah, so our graduates do go far and wide, as all young Irish people do.
And they're not only joining professional practices, but they're also joining councils or even GPO,
NGOs.
NGOs, sorry,
yeah.
NGOs.
Non-governmental organizations.
Some are actually heading towards an academic career. So our first graduates are now joining us in our teaching team, or have been joining us in the last 2 years. So they're coming back and they might consider to take the academic route. So there are all sorts of different options for you. And one big advantage in all design professions is that you learn a lot of transferable skills, which might then enable you to go for any other profession after your landscape architecture.
Yes, I picked up that as one question. What other sort of courses or careers are attainable? And I was sort of scratching my head trying to think what else apart from in the sort of environmental or design area. But we have had people that have gone on, they've taken master's courses afterwards. We are a 4-year undergraduate degree, but that gives you an entry into the profession. Some people have gone into graphic design and
that's
right. Things like, I'm trying to think. And the whole there's a wide range there. It's just hard. People have gone into teaching as well, as Michael talked about, and teaching in other areas. Somebody has recently become the, what did Deirdre Black came with the local authority? She became the heritage officer in a local authority. Yeah, so a range of careers.
And then Camilla, just to ask you a question, as one of our current students, do you find that you spend a lot of time in studio? Do you spend a lot of time doing contact hours? And do you have time to maybe pursue other kind of things outside your career, your kind of degree area? What's your kind of feel for that?
Yeah, no, we have a lot of studio hours, especially when we're actually in studio, not like taking like consideration of COVID. But like I feel like if you organize yourself with all the assignments, you have time. For example, like I joined the karate society, the dance society, the musical one. So you have time to do all of the things that you want to do. You just like need to get organized. But yeah, studio might take like most of your time. But yeah.
I think that links to a question, what was the hardest thing of the course in your opinion? And Camilla, you might answer that, but it probably is time management and the sort of studio in the early days.
Yeah.
So the question is, what is the hardest thing area of the course in your
Yeah,
opinion?
I think the hardest thing was, yeah, certainly like time management. Especially like in the first year, you might have like a project each week, and then as you start going on, maybe after Christmas you get more than one assignment, so you have like projects on top of each other, and you might have join also like competitions. So yeah, you just need to get like really organized and manage your time. I think that's it.
But I might just jump in here because it's actually like that in practice as well. So it's really good to develop those skills in college in order for you to be able to work proficiently.
There's a question here, if you don't do Irish but do English in another language, is it possible to do this course? I think the answer is yes, but I'm not absolutely certain. Laura, I mean, many people have exemption from
Yeah,
Irish.
exactly. So if students are applying through the CAO and doing the Irish Leaving Cert, it is a requirement that they are doing Irish. Now, they don't have to do a higher level, it's just a pass, even at ordinary level, unless they have an exemption, in which case then, no, they don't have to present Irish. But unless they have an official exemption, if they're doing the Leaving Cert and through the CAO, they do have to have Irish. But
That's a UCD requirement, not a landscape architecture one.
It's a UCD requirement, not a landscape architecture requirement, yeah. So it's for any course in UCD, you do have to have Irish unless you have an official exemption. And then for international students, most of them would qualify for the exemption.
I'm just looking to see if there's any. Ooh, I don't know the answer to the one. What's the ratio of the amount of people who apply versus how many you take on? I don't know that figure.
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer because, I mean, we don't get the official numbers as far as if it's coming through the CEO system, but the points are kind of a good reflection on the interest that's out there. So we have seen the points kind of rise up a little year on year for landscape architecture, and that would kind of put it to you that the interest is growing year on year. Yep. For landscape architecture. Now we have a small class size, and you know, every year, you know, we fill the places every year for the place that we do offer. So we don't know what the ratio of who applies and who doesn't, but as we see the points are rising, it means the interest is also growing.
There was a question, what are the points? That was in an earlier slide. They were 407 this year, which was a slight increase. It was an increase on the previous year. So they're growing up by small amounts. And I think
in 2019, I think there were 353 points.
Yes, they were. Yeah, they were. That's right.
Now this year may be a small an anomaly, so they may go back down next year. But we just don't know what the points will do year on year. But the is
yeah, our points are usually approximately the same as planning and lower than architecture.
Yeah, and just in relation to architecture, I know it's a question I get a lot, and I think there was one there. As far as students who may be interested in architecture, is there the opportunity to maybe, if you join either architecture or landscape architecture, to swap over at the end of first year to transfer over, or is there a good overlap between the courses, or maybe what sets landscape architecture apart from architecture and the kind of students that would be interested in landscape architecture versus architecture?
I think the answer is that you can't switch at the end of the first year. I think you've committed. They are two very different disciplines. I know they both have the word architecture in them, but you know, we are designing, we are the outdoors, we are the environment. So the difference between the two, I suppose, we think, I mean, we consider we're dealing with sort of the living world, the bigger environment. There's a lot more management in landscape architecture because a lot of the components we deal with change and evolve over time. So we very often have a long-term view. A building is kind of complete when it's finished and the doors are open to its users, while a landscape has to be looked after and managed in perpetuity. Michael, you may have other comments about the different types of the two different types of the area. I had a question in the feed: do we design buildings? No, in landscape architecture we design, modify, mediate landscapes. We don't design buildings.
Yeah, each year we have one or two students who come along to landscape architecture with a slight misconception. So the word architecture doesn't mean that we are designing buildings, objects. I mean, we might, at the end of our study, be able to design smaller structures, but we are not equipped to design buildings, really. And swapping is not, unfortunately, not an option. I mean, yeah.
But we work alongside architects in our working life. And Teodora, you might want to talk about that because I know your practice works very closely with some of the leading architectural practices.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think while we don't design buildings, we have a really good understanding of the basics of the design of a building. You really have to be able to understand how a building functions so that you're able to either design the landscape around it or the other way around. The building is designed to suit the landscape, but there's that relationship that I think is really important in practice as well. And I think, you know, from first year down to fourth year, we do take modules, I think we do, that are with the architects that help us develop those skills, and then is really apparent in practice when you're working alongside those professions.
Right, I think we have time for one more question. It's just in relation to if there are any PLC places or maybe other avenues that people could join the course, particularly if they're not getting either the Leaving Cert requirements or the points requirements possibly.
Yes, we've just put in place a link with, is it BlackRock? Is it now called BlackRock? It used to be Dunleary. It used to be out in there. It's it's called the BlackRock College. I'm sorry, I can't get the
Institute of Higher Education. No, what is it? Yeah.
It's IADT, yeah, Institute of Art and Design and Technology. I think it's based in Dunleary.
Is that now based in BlackRock? So we have a link with that, which means if you do their course and you achieve, I think it is distinction in a certain number of modules there, you can come into the first year of the program. Yes.
Right, so I think that's all the time we have for today. So I just want to thank all our attendees for joining us and for listening, and obviously to our speakers for taking the time out to give a presentation today.